Everybody, welcome to your last intro video, module 7 intro video. We're going to be talking about chapter 11 is about relationship climate or the emotional tone of a relationship. And then chapter 12 is all about conflict and conflict resolution. So we're going to try to augment some of that in this video, mostly going to be on the side of conflict resolution. That's where we're going to spend most of our time. First of all, just to get us started, remember from the last video we talked about immediacy, the closeness that we have in relationships that we have with just a few people. It's more rare than common. And remember the opposite of immediacy. I talked about that, where we're not close at all and we don't enjoy spending time with that particular person. Yeah, well, those ideas, those thrusts are going to have a lot to do with the conversation that you're going to have with your textbook in chapter 11, the emotional climates, or the relationship climates, or the emotional tone of your relationship. So I'm going to let that chapter speak for itself, but essentially what you will learn in chapter 11 is that the reasons and theories, what this chapter will unpack are the reasons and theories why some relationships are warm and bright, and why some relationships are dark and stormy. Thus, the relationship climate metaphor. Okay, and this chapter will talk about what you can do about that. What you can do to improve the relational climates, the emotional tones of all of your relationships. Yes, what you can do. You need to remember, you really can't change other people. Other people only change when they decide they want to change. But one of the great frustrations in life is to spend all of your time trying to change other people. If you haven't figured that out yet, that's a little piece of free advice right there. That's very good advice. So here we go. Now we're getting into chapter 12, conflict and conflict resolution. One of the things you need to remember about conflict is that conflict is not a problem. We don't like conflict. We don't like it. It's unpleasant. We hate it. We try to avoid it. That's our favorite conflict resolution style, strategy, and behavior is avoidance. We love avoiding it. Here's what you need to know about conflict, though. Conflict is not the problem. Conflict is an inanimate object. People are the problem. The way people handle conflict is the problem. Conflict is not the problem. People and how we react to and handle and try to resolve conflict, that becomes the problem. So let's talk a little bit about my buddy David Augsburger. I've mentioned him before a couple of times in this class. Highly respect him. He's written many books. He's a double PhD. I took a graduate class from him once that was just absolutely spectacular. Augsburger pretty much revolutionized my life with what I'm about to tell you. Let's say you have hurt somebody, you've offended somebody, you've made them mad, they're angry with you, you've done something wrong to somebody else, and finally you're willing to admit it. You're done denying that you did it. You're done making excuses for doing it. You're done gaslighting the person. In other words, telling them that it was their fault that you hurt them or did something bad to them. You're done with the denial, the excuses, and the gaslight. You're done with all of that. Now you're ready to admit it and take responsibility. You're ready to ask for forgiveness. You're ready to apologize for what you have done. Augsburger says that the best thing you can do is to follow these 4 steps. And ever since I learned this 3 decades ago, I'll tell you, it is, first of all, I don't like hurting other people, offending them, doing something wrong. But when I do, I have found that owning up to it, taking responsibility for it, and using these 4 steps in person with that person. Don't try to do this digitally. Do it in person. But doing this has repaired and reconciled every single relationship in which I was at fault for something. Every single time. Because the vast majority of people never apologize like this. The vast majority of people have no idea how to sincerely ask for forgiveness. And so, here's step number 1. When you sit down with a person, Confess the offense. Confess what you did. Tell them you know what you did. Here's what I did. I did this to you. And the reason you do this is there's two reasons. Number one, the person wants to know that you know what you did. They want to know that. The person who's been offended or hurt. Second of all, you need to make sure that you're going to apologize for what it is they're mad at you for. Years ago, I apologized to somebody once for something, and when I got done with the apology, they looked at me and they said, okay, great, fine, I forgive you for that, but that's not what I'm mad at you about. So you need to get on the same page at the beginning. So that's important. Here's the second thing you need to do. And this is the most difficult step. You need to acknowledge the pain you caused the person. You need to acknowledge that. You need to tell them, listen, I understand that this hurt you, and here's why it hurt you. They want to know that you know why they are hurt. And they want to get some sense that you're at least trying to feel their pain. Now, this is humbling. You're going to eat some humble pie when you do that. But it's really a very important step, maybe the most important step. Augsburger says, this is a little bit too flowery for me, but I get the point. He says that before two people can move ahead with a relationship, they have to remember the pain together. And that's true, you do. And here's the other reason why this step is important. You may not know why they were so hurt by what you did or said. Legitimately, you may be sitting there going, I have no idea why this was so bad for you. Don't ask like that, but sincerely say, listen, I want to acknowledge the pain that I've put you in, but I need to understand it first. I'm not sure why this hurt you so much. Is there something I need to know? And then that gives that person the chance to explain it to you. And you should listen to the explanation without interjecting or objecting. You should not argue with why they are hurt. It's their pain. Let them have it. Okay? So, acknowledge the pain. Confess the offense. Acknowledge the pain. Here's the third one, is to promise. Now, what are you going to promise them? Huh? What are you going to promise? In my in-person classes, I always ask, and at least one or two people in the class will always say, will know exactly what you're going to promise. You're going to promise not to ever do it again. You'll never do this thing to that person again. Now, are you going to do it again? Probably. We're humans. We're fallible. We forget. But the reason this is important is because the person you're apologizing to needs to know that you're aware that this is a problem and that you're going to work hard to not ever do it again. And then the last step is to ask. There you go. There's that dyslexia again. Ask for forgiveness. You need to ask the person, will you forgive me? Now, a lot of people say, well, those first three steps, you do those first three steps, isn't it obvious you're asking for forgiveness? Probably, but you still need to ask. You still need to say the words and make the ask. You need to put the ball in their court. You need to put the ball in their court. You've done everything you can now to make it right. And it's never going to be 100% right. You can't go back and change time. But now you've owned the offense and you've apologized for it. And I will tell you, every person I've ever approached with these 4 steps has looked at me at the end and said, I've never had anybody apologize to me for something like that in my life. Of course I forgive you. I thank you so much. They're stunned. They're shocked. So this is one way to handle conflict if you're willing to simply own your offense. Now, most conflict isn't really like that. Most conflict is 2 different perspectives clashing with each other. It's 2 people who have different goals, who have different perceived resources, who have different reasons for wanting to do things. Most conflict isn't just one person apologizing to the other, and then that's the end of it. So, I want to go over something from Joseph DeVito. I've mentioned him before. textbook in Com 100 that we used to use, a great textbook. DeVito lists styles and strategies for conflict resolution. And you're probably familiar with these. Again, I'm going to mention the show The Office. If you watch The Office, you know that in season 2, episode 10, it was called Conflict Resolution. Michael gets angry and he goes and grabs the conflict resolution workbook or manual from Toby, and he starts trying to solve conflict in the office, and it becomes a disaster, of course. But as he's reading the different conflict styles, essentially he's looking at DeVito's stuff. So there are 5 of these. 3 of them are not good. So there's avoiding. Avoiding is the I lose, you lose style of conflict resolution. Everybody loses when you avoid. Now, there is something called letting it go that is not really avoidance. I have a little bit of a bone to pick with the textbook in this regard. The textbook says sometimes you do avoid, and it's good to avoid because you're not going to bring it up and you're not that worried about it. Well, that's letting something go. When DeVito talks about avoiding, he's talking about how you're mad about something and you won't let it go, but you're not going to bring it up. It only gets worse when you do that. You need to either let it go or bring it up. And let me just, again, give you some friendly advice. You need to let a lot of stuff go in your close relationships. You need to be willing to let a lot of stuff go in your close relationships. It'll make your relationships better. If you're the kind of person that's got to bring up everything, if every last tiny little minuscule offense is something that you need to go to the mat on, nobody's going to want to be in a relationship with you. You're a miserable person if you got to bring everything up. You got to go to the mat. It's a hill to die on. I'm going to drop the gloves. We're going to go to battle. Okay? Learn how to let things go. Jackie, in my marriage, she's an expert at letting things go. She lets lots of stuff go, which then tells me when she brings something up, I need to listen because I know she has let a ton go. And so if it's important enough for her to bring up, I need to listen. That's why that's one of the reasons why avoiding doesn't work, but you need to be smart about this. Either let it go, and I would say let a majority of the stuff go, or bring it up. But don't avoid. Don't avoid it and then stew on it. It just gets worse. That's avoiding. Then there's competing. This is not helpful. The Latin, the English word compete comes from a conflation of 2 Latin words that mean to strive together so both get better. That puts competing in a very good light. And it's true. If you want to get better at something, you need to compete with others who are good at it. I grew up playing a little bit of tennis when I was younger. I always got better when I played somebody who was as good as or better than me. I never got better when I could dominate somebody. It's just the way it is. That's not the kind of competing we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is I win, you lose. We're talking about zero-sum game competing. We're talking about glass parking lot competing. Those are metaphors. But it's I win, you lose. This is I lose, you lose. This is I win, you lose. Not helpful. This is also known as disintegrative. Now again, I'm a word nerd, so let's break down the word. The root word is integrity. What does integrity mean? Well, in philosophy and sociology and theology, integrity means honesty, ethics, work ethic, those kinds of things. But in science, integrity means whole or unfragmented. Whole or unfragmented. What does the prefix dis do? It blows things apart. So, competing is disintegrative. It blows things apart. It fragments things. It fragments relationships. Then there is accommodating. Accommodating is the I lose, you win style of conflict resolution. This is also not healthy. People who accommodate are usually paired with a strong competitor, somebody who always has to win. And what they find in accommodating is, or here you go, here's another word for accommodating: compliance. Compliance. In other words, your heart's not in it. You're doing it to achieve some other goal. And what that other goal is usually short-term peace. If you give in, if you accommodate, if you comply with a strong competitor, you achieve something that feels pretty good, short-term peace. But accommodators over time also experience long-term bitterness and resentment. And that bitterness and resentment will eventually come out in very unhealthy ways. So accommodating isn't that good either. So these last two are the ones that are helpful. Collaborating. Now the textbook is all about collaboration. And I can understand why. Collaborating is good. Collaborating is I win, you win. I win, you win. Doesn't mean that there isn't some work involved, but it's where both people feel like, okay, I got something out of that. I'm still feeling pretty whole about it. So avoiding, I lose, you lose. Competing, I win, you lose. Accommodating, I lose, you win. Collaborating, I win, you win. And then there's compromise. Compromise, which is also known as horse trading, that's an old school term. You can look it up and figure out what that means. But compromise is like negotiation. It means I'm going to win some and lose some. I'm going to have to put some skin in this game, but I'm going to take a little bit out. I win some and lose some. You win some and lose some. That's compromise. And that's a helpful, healthy conflict resolution style as well. Now, along comes Littlejohn, Stephen Littlejohn. Stephen Littlejohn casts conflict resolution in terms of conflict resolution behaviors. And I have attached a document in Module 7 that is the conflict management coding scheme where all 25 conflict resolution behaviors are listed. And Littlejohn groups these conflict resolution behaviors into three major categories. There are avoidance behaviors, and there are 10 of them. You can look at the sheet that I've attached to Module 7 for you and follow along if you want. There are 10 avoidance behaviors. Those are no good. There are 7 competing behaviors. Those are really not good. And again, these competing behaviors are called disintegrative behaviors. And then, this is the word I like. I like it better than compromise or even collaborating. There are 8 cooperative behaviors. These are the behaviors that are the best to use in conflict resolution. Things like soliciting disclosure and soliciting criticism. And you can look at the list and see those behaviors there. These behaviors are called not disintegrative behaviors, but integrative behaviors. These behaviors promote wholeness. They promote the lack of fragmentation in relationships. So, conflict resolution styles and strategies, conflict resolution behaviors. Really helpful to understand how this works. And I would highly recommend following the script and the supporting characteristics of the 8 conflict resolution behaviors. I've used that in my relationships as well, and it's been very, very helpful to understand conflict through that lens. Also, understanding conflict through the lens of collaborating and compromise. 2 other terms that I really need you to know for this module that I believe will be helpful to you, and I believe you have probably experienced and understand. So the first one is this really unhelpful conflict resolution style, strategy, behavior, characteristic known as triangulation. Triangulation occurs when somebody wants to win a conflict resolution but doesn't want to suffer any of the costs associated with winning conflict resolution. By the way, I mentioned competing is an unhelpful way to resolve conflict, and all the scholars say the same thing. One of the reasons that competing doesn't work is because the cost of competing to win conflict resolution usually, often, almost always outweighs whatever it is you're trying to win in the conflict. The costs in lost relationships, lost intimacy, lost trust, lost reputation, no good. Not helpful. You may have won something, but there's a lot that you also lost in the midst of that. Triangulation is used by the person who wants to compete and win but wants somebody else to bear the cost. So what they do is they're mad at somebody, and so they go to somebody else and they say, hey, you know so-and-so? Yeah. Well, I'm really upset with them, and here's what they did to me, and you need to go and tell them to fix it. So then that person, like an idiot, goes to the other person and tells them, hey, you know Frank? Well, Frank said blah, 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 this, that, and the other thing. You need to go and fix it. What is that person going to do? Here's what they're not going to do. They're not going to go, oh, yeah, you're right. I need to go fix that. No, they're not. They're going to go, oh, yeah? Well, what Frank hasn't told you is this, blah, 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 blah. You need to go back and tell Frank that. Then this person comes back and tells me this. Well, he said you did this, this, that, and the other thing. Okay? It's so stupid. But people get caught up in this all the time, trying to triangulate. You need to take care of your own conflict with the person that you're in conflict with. That's it. Okay? That's triangulation. Here's the other item. Gunny sacking. Gunny sacking is this conflict resolution thing that people like to do where, here you go. It's kind of a form of avoidance. They won't let something go, but they won't bring it up, but instead they collect it in a metaphorical gunny sack that they carry around with themselves all the time. They just carry around all these offenses. Maybe you've been in a relationship where, a long-term relationship where you get into an argument with the person. You're in conflict, and the other person begins to sense that they're losing the argument. They're losing on points. They're losing on whatever it is. They feel like they're losing. And so what they'll do is they'll go into their gunny sack and they'll find something that you did 7 years ago. And they'll pull it out and they'll go, well, what about this? You did this to me. And that puts you back on your heels. And you might even say something like, why are you bringing that up? That happened during the Obama administration, for crying out loud. Why are you bringing that up? It's really unhelpful. It's really unhealthy. Perhaps you're a gunny sacker. I hope not. Don't gunny sack. You need to let things go or bring them up. Don't carry them around with you. By the way, when you carry around stuff with you and you don't bring it up and you don't let it go, you realize you're hurting yourself way more than you're hurting the person you're mad at, because they have no idea. They don't know. You're the one who's suffering emotionally by carrying it around with you. So bring it up or let it go. It's the best counsel I can give you in the last 5 minutes anyway. So that's it. No more videos for you. Adios. Hope you do well on Module 7 and on your final. Message me if you have any questions or you need anything. Thanks. Bye-bye.